The first time I went to prison, I swore I would never go back. I looked into a cell at a woman's name who I do not know, but a face I could never forget. She looked at me the day before she was gonna be transferred to death row at a penitentiary up north. And she whispered, "I want my life to matter." Now, before you think I shanked someone with a shiv and served hard time in a pen, let me pop this suburban bubble real quick. I was 26 years old, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and a friend of mine who worked for a Los Angeles correctional facility invited me into prison to share with a group of women. I had just graduated graduate school, and I felt like it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to give back to my own community. Had I known then that there would be 11 million people in the jail system in this great country this year alone, I might have been discouraged. I might have even been dissuaded at the statistic that every 3 out of 4 inmates will go back and be re-incarcerated. I might even been depressed over the statistic that there are more prisons and jails than there are colleges and universities. But not to be outdone, I was excited to give back and take a look at the sea of faces that stood before me. But the reason why I said yes is, in thinking about this, is these women were living a life that I could have easily led. According to statistics, I could have been repeating the generational cycle of those that had gone before me, living on the concrete streets of Los Angeles. These women, I thought, were very different from me. But were they? I'm a first-generation American. I was raised in the hood. I was a recipient of donated clothes and food. I was academically illiterate. I couldn't read, write, or spell at the age of 12, and I was obese growing up. According to statistics, I could have been repeating the generational cycles again and again and again. I prepared a talk, and I was excited to be able to walk into this room to a sea of completely uninterested faces. Some with tattoos on their necks, creeping up to their face, telling me and my mama where we could go. And I was excited. That was funny, friends. That was not scary, okay? I looked into a sea of disinterested faces, and I had prepared a talk on succeeding and overcoming. Surprisingly, the message was received very well and hearts were open, but I think that the walls began to dissipate when I gave them a particular assignment. We all kind of got cozy and got to know each other. And I gave them a piece of paper and I gave them a pencil and I said, the assignment is to write down the one thing that you want in this moment of your life. Surprisingly, I got 2 predominant responses. The first one was freedom, which shouldn't be a surprise, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to get out of jail? But how they expressed and articulated freedom is different than you and I might think. Women went around the room and said, I want to be free of addiction. I want to be free to dream again. I want to be free to be with my children. I want to be free to live the life that I thought maybe once I could. I saw the broken humanity in their chicken scratch writings on index cards with prison-approved dull golf pencils. I was excited and I felt like we had a moment. I was packing up my stuff to leave when a prison guard had made his way over to me. During the presentation, I saw a woman who was watching our gathering behind a cell. It was a plexiglass wall, huge plexiglass wall, and there was small holes that she is able to communicate to the guards, or in this case, listen in to our presentation. My eye caught hers, and the guard had informed me that this woman was being taken to death row at a penitentiary up north the very next day, but she had requested to speak with me. Before I could even process what he said, he ushered me over to her, and I introduced myself. In hushed tones, she looked through the plexiglass and whispered into the cutout circles for communication. And she said, I want to tell you what I want. I want purpose. I want my life to matter. The guard had whisked me away because bed checks were about to start. He had taken me to an electronically bolted door that opened up into a long, cavernous, windowless hallway with fluorescent lighting that rung up above. And I walked in silence to a bulletproof window where I received my keys, my wallet, and my phone. I walked in silence to my car, and I sat there completely gobsmacked at the simplistic yet profound understanding that these women had. Freedom and purpose. It's what we all want. That day was so emotional, and if I'm honest with you, it was scary. They told me I couldn't wear high heels because a shoe could fly off and someone could shank me with it. Hand to heaven, that really happened. And so I got into my car and I drove away and I said, I will never go back to prison. Fast forward a few years later, I find myself working for a global anti-human trafficking organization called A21. It's a global office with 13 offices in 12 different countries. And I had the unique honor and privilege of being the global communications officer. While some people like Liam Neeson like to bust down brothel doors and rescue women out of sex slavery, they're referred to as freedom fighters. I wear high heels and fake eyelashes and believe in the power of words. I was gonna be a freedom writer, right? I was gonna sit safe and sane and secure at a desk here in California. That was until I received an email from a coworker. My coworker was in her field office in Thessaloniki, Greece, and she explained to me that she believed that there was a woman who had been trafficked, a VOT, a victim of trafficking, but unfortunately no one could communicate with her because she only spoke Spanish. She went on to communicate to me that my coworker informed the lawyer and the jail that I was flying into town to do a global training and I would gladly be the translator. To which I said, hold up, homegirl. Listen, I'm Latina, and yes, I am brown, but the Spanish I learned was watching soap operas called novelas with my Puerto Rican grandmother, okay? To speak about the illegal ramifications of entry into the European Union without proper documentation, are you kidding me? To which I replied back, I can't do this. To which she replied back, you are our only option. To which I replied back, well, then I'm your best option. I hopped on the plane that day and I was already scheduled to be there to do a global training. But when I landed in Thessaloniki, I was picked up by our lawyer and taken over to a jail. I was met outside by a guard, standing completely straight, eyeing me up and down as I walked towards him. He stood behind a chain link fence, complete with barbed wire at the top, and he speaks to me in broken English. He says, are you the translator? To which I say, sí, yo soy, complete with the thumb and everything, because nothing says professional like a thumbs up, guys. I was so nervous. I was trying to remember all the Spanish phrases I possibly could in order to exercise some foreign language muscle memory. I'll never forget the scene of entering into this jail and being escorted to the second floor of the detention center. As I walked up, I still remember it was mint-colored walls and mint-colored stairs that as I ascended to the second level, I entered in a haze of thick cigarette smoke. There was prison guards smoking, talking back and forth to each other as they kept their eye on row after row after row of cells. One guard came over to me and escorted me to a particular cell. And in this particular cell, concrete floors, concrete walls, concrete ceilings, and thick steel impenetrable bars, keeping the free from the unfree. I stared at these women. There was 13, 14, 15 women laying sandwiched like sardines, laying in a state of comatose on a dirty mat, covering themselves with a burlap blanket. I remember thinking to myself, what is going on? I don't know what had a greater assault on my senses. The fact that it smelled like urine and fecal matter from the cell next door, or the fact that these women lay listless and lifeless, watching a 12-inch television monitor screen positioned outside of their cell of reruns of Dancing with the Stars. I remember thinking, what is going on? A guard motioned to a girl. She had caramel colored skin like mine and deep chocolate brown eyes like mine. She stood to her feet and she came forward. And the moment that I said, hola, me llamo Bianca, nosotros queremos ayudar, her eyes widened and she burst out, ayúdame, ayúdame por favor, help me please. In that moment, I was taken back to the phrase and the wording of that death row inmate years before. It was their call and cry for freedom, and ultimately for our pain to have a purpose. But this is what I do know, that this cry of help me isn't simply for the incarcerated. For there are others in our society, in our community, in our schools, in our streets that are crying out. They have built imprisonments around themselves, strongholds holding them down, whether that's debt, fear, affirmation, addiction, drugs, alcohol, porn. We are incarcerating our soul, and without even realizing it, our soul cries out from deep within, ayúdame, por favor. So the question that I ask today and the idea that I proffer is, will you speak freedom over the incarcerated? When we speak life, when we speak to the shred of good within, it awakens something deep within our soul. When we look at someone and say, you have potential, you have purpose, you are not done, something changes. This is the story of my friend Daphne. I met Daphne at a prison in Lubbock, Texas. And her view and us talking changed my understanding of when freedom begins. This is Daphne, and this is Daphne's story of freedom.
When I first started coming to jail, I was questioning what's going on with my life. All I wanted to do at that time was get out of jail. I was mad at my life. I was mad at God. I didn't understand how this was it. Like, after everything, this was it. This is my life. When you're incarcerated, you don't think that anybody cares or anybody is there or anybody is gonna just love you where you're at. You think that you're judged and you're beneath and you're dirty and you're not good enough and you're a reject, and you think all these things, and you could just tell from the look in someone's eyes that when they love you and that I'm enough and I'm beautiful and you're redeemable. When I came in here into jail, I didn't love myself, and the nice ladies that came to volunteer and teach classes were sweet enough to love on me until I figured out that I was loved.
Freedom begins the moment we believe that we can be set free. If you are free and if you are walking in purpose, will you give keys to those who are begging for help, whether you believe they deserve it or not? One of my favorite authors says, we have been set free to live a free life. But how? Not all of us are gonna be called into anti-trafficking measures. Not all of us are gonna bust into prisons, but all of us have the power and potential to speak life over someone. The question is not whether you are the most articulate, whether you're the most educated, whether you are the tallest, whether you are the skinniest, whether you're most affluent, whether you're popular, whether you're the most pretty. The question is whether or not you are the most willing to go to the debase of society, the most willing to go to the dredges, the most willing to go to the overlooked and the under-resourced and tell them they are worth it. Tell them that they have potential. Tell them and believe it, that if they are not dead, then they are not done. This was spoken over Daphne, and it changed her life. What I believe is that when we speak to people in our life every single day, our words have power to set them free. When I looked at that woman as she laid in her cell for the very last night, she told me she wanted her life to matter. And I promised her that it would, because it did. As it's been said, when you know the truth, it's the truth that will set you free. Thank you.